Welcome to Parents Make a Difference. I'm your host, Josie PV. Does your child have difficulty with math? Are you confused about the EQAO or have questions regarding it? Well, today's episode is an episode you want to listen to. I have the pleasure or I'm excited to have with us Mark Cassar, who has so much background in education. If I can just share with you some of that. He's been a professional educator with over 35 years of experience as a teacher, principal, consultant, author, editor, and post-secondary lecturer. His career has been defined by a commitment to equity, inclusion, and faith-based education. Mark has co-authored professional texts on leadership and inclusivity, written and edited and reviewed for prominent publishers such as Nelson and Pearson, and collaborated with international platforms like Stanford University's UCubed. Mark has lectured in postgraduate programs at the University of Toronto, OSIE, at the University of Western University, and now at Tyndale University School of Education. He has received the Ontario Premier's Award for Education Excellence and recognition as Principal of the Year. Amazing, amazing. I'd like to welcome Mark. Mark, welcome to our podcast together.
Well, thank you so much, Josie. It's wonderful to be with you again and to be able to speak with you and your audience. Thank you so much.
Well, there's so much going on with parents who have their children who are having difficulty with math. You know, we're trying to grasp on how to help our kids, and we've got EQAOs out there trying to help us, schools, trying to help schools, the government to navigate. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about EQAO because some parents might not understand it or know what it really is. What is EQAO assessments, and why do
Yeah,
we do them?
absolutely. So it got a lot of attention in the media lately when the Minister of Education delayed the release of the results by a few months, which is very unusual. Students typically write that assessment in May of the school year, and then the results are released in September, October. So the delay caused a bit of concern for people because they couldn't understand what the delay was all about. So they were finally released, and the minister wasn't very happy. The scores showed that approximately 51% of grade 3 and 6 students were achieving the standard, which is a level 3 or a level 4. Which are pretty good marks, given the situation. But it also showed that about 49% were below that level. So it certainly raised a bit of concern from school boards and parents and even some students and teachers when they looked at the concerns around the marks and where they should be lying in terms of expectations for our students. EQAO is a arm's length organization that was started by the government back in 1996, and it came out of the Royal Commission of Learning. And its role is to create a standardized assessment that would basically assess all students across grade 3, 6, and 9 in mathematics, reading, and writing, and determine some kind of a standardized score to see where they are relative to the curriculum. And so it's been in play for about 10 years now. The math portion included elements that students could write their communication, but since COVID, it's moved to a online multiple choice kind of assessment. And so the communication portion has been left out, but the essence of the assessment is still the same, and students write it basically every May.
There's a lot of information there. Now, a lot of parents are probably familiar with it.
Hmm.
So the grades that they do EQAO for math are which grades, Mark?
So grades 3, 6, and 9. They're in 3-year increments, except for grade 9, which is a bit of a 4-year increment. Well, it's a 3-year increment as well. And those scores are used to provide feedback to teachers and schools and districts to help them sort of put together a better formulation for programming to improve student achievement in math.
Now, if your child didn't get a good score, a two or a one or a two on this EQAO, because all parents end up finding the results, getting the results of what their child did.
Mhm.
What should parents be concerned? Uh, what's your thoughts on that?
So, to answer your question directly, generally speaking, no, they should not be concerned. A lot has to do with assessing students in a holistic totality kind of way. So, teachers, for example, won't give your child a letter grade assessment or a number grade assessment until well into the school year. You, as a parent, would have received a progress report in November after 3 months of school because it's too soon to assess how your child is doing. So the first report card would come home in January, and that's a full 5 months into the school year. So if your EQAO report card comes home and your child didn't do as well as you would have liked them to do, I wouldn't panic for a few reasons. Number one, it is one assessment on one day in a very long year. And there are a lot of variables that could determine whether your child would have had a good day or not. So, and it's only a snapshot, okay? And so, did your child have a great night's sleep? Have they just recovered from the flu? Are they struggling with school in general? How did their report card marks fare relative to EQAO? And how does your child feel about math in the first place? So, there's a lot of variables that come into play. If your child is getting exceptionally good marks on their report card and they come home with a level 2, which translates to a C,
Mm-hmm.
okay, or in a percentage point from 60 to 69, then that's a quite a big jump from an A to a C. And it may be worthwhile to ask questions of the teacher to say, what do you think happened here? If it's the other way around, if they struggle with math and they get a C normally or a level 2 on the EQAO, but the report card marks are skyrocketing and they're getting A's in math in class, then that would be a reason to question it.
Mm-hmm.
But on the whole, I think it's nothing to panic about. It's one assessment in one grade 3 or one grade 6 or one grade 9 year. But it does allow parents the opportunity to start a conversation with their child. How did you feel about the EQAO assessment? Did you find it hard? What did you find most difficult about it? I would look for classroom evidence. What are the marks like that your child is bringing home? Are their marks in line with EQAO or are they way out of line or out of line with EQAO? So there's lots of questions parents can ask, but I wouldn't panic because it's one small element in a much larger picture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can you give us an example of a question that might fit the seven mathematical processes, just to help the parents understand what kind of questions are out there and how detailed they are, what to expect?
Yeah, so very, very rarely would an EQAO exam or assessment, I shouldn't say exam because it's not an exam, it's an assessment. Very rarely would they include sort of drill and kill questions of saying, what's 1/3 plus 3/4? Very rarely is it just that. Those kinds of questions are typically asked, but in the context of a problem solving question, right? So, for example, if Josie has a movie ticket that costs $12 and she wants to buy a popcorn for 5, but she brought 40 to the theater, how much money does she have left? And does she have enough money to buy a second popcorn? Something along those lines. Okay. So that requires students to understand the money that they're given. It asks students to understand what the question is asking. it requires them to do it in a reading comprehension context. And then they have to take the next step in using whatever mathematical the knowledge they have to actually answer the question accurately. So it's a multi-step, pronged process that is it's way outside the skill set of simply adding and subtracting.
Now, sometimes if a child is having difficulty reading, um, sometimes they don't answer the question properly, and it's not because they don't know how to dissect the problem, but sometimes we've had this conversation, it's the reading that might be hindering them. What can we do about that, though?
Literacy and numeracy are often tied into each other more than we sometimes realize because I think traditionally, perhaps you and I were taught that numeracy is only about numbers and can you calculate? And if you can't calculate and the answer is wrong, then the whole thing is wrong. But what we've learned over time is that the student's ability to communicate their thinking is paramount in problem solving. And so, what happens if your child is struggling with, let's say, decoding and comprehension? Then, how are they supposed to comprehend and decode the math question on top of that? So
Mm-hmm.
that's quite the challenge. So you'll have to take a look and assess how your child's reading is progressing, what grade they're in, and if you see that they are struggling with literacy, more than likely they will struggle with the problem solving aspect in mathematics.
Mm-hmm.
It would be difficult not to. So that's a conversation to be had with your child's teacher to see, number one, what are the strategies you can employ at home to support the reading? What are the strategies your teacher, your child's teacher, is using to improve their reading comprehension and decoding? And then three, how are those strategies being applied in the math classroom so that your child can attack those problems in a way that leads to success?
Mm-hmm. So, parents out there, if your kids are having difficulty with reading or they're not at the level that they should be at, we really do encourage you to see what you can do to bring them up, to get, whatever resources you can get to help you in that, because it is going to affect the mathematics, right? And so we need to do that with intention if that's what one of the issues are. It's they're linked together, as Mark has been saying. Yes. What kind of tips do you have for parents on how they can help their kids with math? Because math is so different than before. I mean, maybe you can explain the, a little bit of a summary of how we are doing math today. It's different than before we go into tips.
Yeah, often as a principal, I would hear parents say to me, "This is new math, and I didn't do it this way, so I don't know how to help my child." And the truth is, math hasn't changed in thousands of years. We do geometry and algebra in the same context as they did 2,000 years ago. What's changed is the expectation we have on how to use math to solve problems and how the mathematician communicates their learning. So, for example, I learned how to multiply 7 times 7 strictly by memorizing. I remember my teachers giving me a multiplication table, and I had to memorize everything from 0 times 0 all the way to 12 times 12. And I got pretty good at it. And once you got to 12 times 12, you were done. And I use this with my students at the School of Education now who want to be teachers. And I say, well, then what's 12 times 13? And very, very few people actually have an answer because they stopped memorizing at 12 times 12. So that shows one problem of over reliance on multiplication. But it also shows another problem where they didn't have any strategies to solve for what 12 times 13 was. Okay. So the expectation for coming up with strategies and showing multiple representations on how to solve a problem is sort of what's critical in this curriculum because the job market has changed. What we need from graduates has changed. There's a much larger reliance on coding, technology, and the implementation of these problem solving pieces in the work world. It's changed, right? So school needs to change along with it. So there are some things you can do as a parent that will help your child. One comment I hear often from parents is, "Oh, I'm not a math person, so it's okay. My little Johnny's not a math person either." That's actually not okay, because what we're demonstrating to children is just because their parent wasn't good at something, that it's okay for them to be okay, not okay with something. So being a math person is not inherited, it's not genetic, it's a growth mindset. And what parents should be doing is reframing that belief that I'm not a math person with something that would ignite the passion for learning something new. So, as opposed to saying, well, I'm not a math person, so I'm not surprised I can't do this, really what you should be framing it for your child is saying, you know what, you just haven't learned this yet, but we're going to learn it together. So, if parents position themselves as a co learner, and not as the be all and end all to have all that information ready and waiting, then that changes the dynamic totally. And the child no longer sees themselves as a passive recipient of information, but more as an exploratory learner, where math is not so scary anymore. And it's not so bad because mom and dad are going to go on that journey with me. Okay. So that's the first thing I would do is I would really change that mindset. The second thing is math tends to generate a lot of anxiety with people, and they will often see themselves as less than if they can't perform the math quickly. So it's important to lower the emotional barrier for children and give them activities or questions that allow them to succeed and then slowly, step by step, build up. So, one of the ways you can do that is to make math concrete. If you're talking about patterning, introduce some jelly beans and yellow, green, red, blue, and so forth to give kids a visual of what patterning might look like. If you're talking about probability, bring out some dice and throw the dice and see what numbers can come up. Take out a deck of cards. Talk about how many cards there are there. Pardon me. And what are the chances of pulling out a king or a spade? So, making things concrete will help lower the emotional barrier and give kids the opportunity to see math as kind of fun. So there are some ideas for parents to use.
Where can or what things should they look up, let's say on YouTube, uh, types of games that they can help reinforce some of these concepts, like you were saying, the dice games and so forth,
Mhm.
and patterning. Do you have any tag words that you think that they should be searching?
Yeah, there is no shortage of websites online that are happy to charge parents a fee to access, for sure. And I'm not affiliated with any of them. So the ones I might suggest are just I'm suggesting them because they're good and they're effective, not necessarily because I have any connection to them. But Knowledge Hook is one that's really quite good.
Hmm.
It's used in schools,
Yeah.
and it tracks students' success based on where they start and what the goals are, and gives steps for success in the future. So I would try Knowledge Hook for sure. For some of the kids who are a bit older, Khan Academy is good. It also shows it gives videos explaining the math, a
Hmm.
good visual process because kids often learn visually, right? Um, it's really important that they be able to see what a fraction circle looks like, or what algebra tiles look like, or what a number line looks like, as opposed to just thinking about it theoretically, where it's too abstract. So the more you can show them visually, the better they'll understand moving from that concrete to a more abstract fashion. But there's just two that I would recommend parents look at.
Hmm. And these are just suggestions, parents. You can find some other ones out there, but yes, some suggestions there to start off with. And there's games there so that it helps them. Knowledge Hook is more of a game type of, if I'm correct. I didn't do Knowledge Hook with my students, but we had it at our school. I wasn't teaching the grade for that, but that was definitely one of the ones.
And Josie, it isn't always just about going online and purchasing site access. There are things that parents can do for free at home. strategies that work equally as well. So even just asking an open-ended question. So instead of saying, okay, what's 13 times 2? Ask your child, so how many different ways can we show 13 times 2 using pictures, numbers, and words?
Mm-hmm.
And get them to draw it out, get them to put it together on paper first, and ask them to say, well, how do you know that 13 times 2 is 26? How do you know you're right? Students who rely too heavily on memorizing formulas or algorithms will get to the answer, and they will often not know if their answer is reasonable because they just followed the formula, but they have no clue if they're right or wrong. So if you ask, your child, how many centimeters of snow do you think fell on the driveway today?
Mm-hmm.
And they said, oh, it looks like 7,000 to me. It's not wholly reasonable. So you have to sort of pry a little bit. Well, how did you get that number? So even just that kind of a math talk at home really helps kids to think about their understanding of math and whether an answer is plausible. Mostly every day, I would say we're cooking, whether it's dinner or lunch, getting your child to help with the measurements really helps a lot. Conversation about ratio, how much flour to cornstarch or whatever the case is. Those kinds of things really help kids to understand math better around proportion, around reasoning, and conversion, right? How often do we go into Google and ask, well, I don't remember how many ounces are in a pound and how many grams are in a kilogram. Those are all math conversions, right? So those conversations are very, very helpful. And then the final thing I'll bring up in terms of helping your child is to celebrate their ideas and their effort and not the right answer. And you might say, oh, it's counterintuitive because if they didn't get the right answer, what was the point of all that? Right. But in calculating math, sometimes we make calculation errors, but everything else was right. Our thinking was right. Our communication was right. And so the final answer isn't always the most critical thing, but celebrating the success that they have with their ideas and their creativity and their effort goes a long, long way. Because if all you focus is the answer, when they get it wrong, it causes that stress and that anxiety. And I think that's detrimental to their learning.
As parents, what can we do when we see that our kids are really frustrated over, doing math? You find that they don't want to get to it. They're very anxious. Do you have any suggestions how to help them kind of refocus or calm down, and then so that they can go with a clear mind?
Yeah. At the School of Education, where I'm teaching student teachers how to teach math, we talked about their initial perceptions of mathematics. Now, they're teachers going to teach math. And so, what was your initial perception of math when you were a child? Almost always, they have these dark visions of sitting at the kitchen table with one of their parents, where the parent was drilling and killing them with facts and the anxiety that it caused and the stress that it caused because you had to perform and you had to hurry up because dinner was waiting. And if you didn't pull off the multiplication table, you got yelled at or somebody got upset. It was just not a good scene. And so many of my students spoke to that. So if that's still happening, then obviously that's problematic because nobody learns under stress or nobody learns under pressure like that. So really, what's the best thing for you to do? Well, if your child comes home with homework, understand something. That homework should not be marked at all. It should be practice and reinforcement. So it is not the end of the world if they're struggling with the homework and they don't get it all right. It's okay. It just gives the teacher some data to use to assess whether your child needs a little bit extra support on a particular concept. But if you're at home and you're sitting at the kitchen table and they're doing the work and they're really struggling, time to take a break. Go for a walk, go get some fresh air, take 10 minutes, go grab a drink, reframe your mind, calm down, and come back, and we're going to try it again. And maybe we can offer some leading questions to help them. So, what do you think about that question? What information do you have? What problem is it asking you? Where could you start with that question? What information is missing? Those are kind of leading prompts that might trigger something with your child to help them as they work through their homework. Might be a good idea to circle the questions that your child is struggling with, and note for the teacher when you have a conversation, say, you know what, my child struggled with conversion of metric from meters to centimeters. They're struggling with that. Can you spend a few minutes with him and see what the misconceptions are? So, validating your child's effort is a great way to go. If they are struggling with particular concepts, speak with your teacher and really try hard to help your child explain their thinking with the math, because it's through that communication that you will be able to determine, are there gaps? So if they're struggling converting a fraction to a decimal, it could be that they don't understand the fraction in the first place. So those are the pieces you want to try with your child. Have them hear them when they say they're frustrated, try to determine where the gaps are, lower the emotional barrier, and give them breaks. And if they don't get the homework done, then it's okay. They don't get it done. And then communicate with your child's teacher where the issues are. So those are some pieces there.
Thank you. I hope some people were taking notes and some of those actual what to do or what questions to ask. So you just have to rewind it and listen to that again if you didn't get that, because you can write down some of those things. And I do that sometimes when I'm listening to a podcast and I want to really learn from it. I write down what I'm listening to so that I can refer back to it. It's like, what did he say? So there was some tips there, some good tips. Because we do need our kids to be calm when they're doing it. And if they're frustrated, we're not going to get anywhere. We're frustrated because we can't get them to finish the work, and we do have things to do, and it's taking so long. But we have to look at the big picture, and it's important to know that we can move and become have that growth mindset. As a kid, were you really good at math? Was that one of your favorite subjects? Is that why you're teaching it now, or is it something that you just moved and got better at with time?
Um, my journey was a bit of a roller coaster at math up until I got to grade 11. And then in grade 11, the math got very, very abstract. And I really struggled with the abstract. And then it wasn't until years later that I learned that I struggled with the abstract because I didn't understand what the math meant in the first place. I was too busy just memorizing formulas and memorizing algorithms and just spitting it out mechanically that I didn't
Mm.
understand what I was doing. So I know that in my journey. So helping my student teachers realize that that journey will translate into something, I hope, that's a better math experience for our students. Very rarely, Josie, do you ever hear someone say, "Oh, I have history anxiety" or "I have geography anxiety"? It doesn't happen, but we hear kids say a lot that I hate math. It stresses me out.
And why do we
Um,
need it? They say. Why do we need it
and
anyways?
yes, and they'll say, "I'm never going to use this ever again, and for the rest of my life. What do I need to do this for?" So showing kids the meaning behind the math and why it's important and how they're going to use it in their life, beyond relying on a calculator, beyond relying on the cashier who's using the cash register to figure it out. And maybe more importantly, it's beyond what AI is now doing for us, Josie. That's a bigger problem. Is simply some kids are just putting into Chat GPT, and whatever Chat GPT says it is, then it must be right. But if they're going to use it as a glorified calculator, they will not understand the concept, and they were just simply looking for the right answer. And if they can't communicate why it's the right answer, they will really struggle on EQAO in grade 3, 6, and 9, and they will probably struggle in grade 11. And you will see that this has a big impact on students of different gender. So, for example, girls perform just as well as boys do in math
Mhm.
right up until about grade 11.
Mm.
And students who continue on with mathematics to grade 12 into university are traditionally and predominantly boys. And the girls tend to drop off by that point because of the societal pressure and influence that they have, that you don't need to know this anymore. So then why am I taking it? And that's why, for example, we have a disproportion of males in engineering compared to girls in engineering, because of societal norms and expectations that we have for our girls. So it's important, especially important, that our girls are given the push and the courage and the support to know that they can do well in math, and it's not just a thing for boys to do in university. So that's a critical piece to all those parents out there who have daughters.
We want to see more girls out there in
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
fields where there's mathematics, where math is involved. And so, in saying that, it's important for us to encourage that we can grow. I mean, you were able to move from where you were at to to at this point you're actually teaching teachers. But just that story in itself, thank you for sharing that, and for being open to allow us in your life a little bit, to let us know that, because we want to we want to come across as having a growth mindset, like you said, for the parents, if to not say, oh, I'm not good at math, to say, okay, well, let's learn this together. I'm not sure how it works now, but let's learn this together. And I think that's what's most critical in anything, is to say, well, I might not know it, but I can learn. I can figure this out. And what was the word you said? I don't know it yet.
Yet.
Yet is that word that we need to use, because yet is to say possibility of knowing it later. So, parents out there, use that word yet. I encourage you, in whatever it is you're moving your child through, you're helping to push them through. And for those that are having difficulty in math, that there is hope, that there are strategies. And like you said, we need to learn how to explain. Like, they do give points or marks for explanation, even if the answer is not correct.
Absolutely.
The process is so important, and I don't think, perhaps some parents don't know that, how important that they're thinking. So if they're not the type, they just come up with the answer and they know the answer, but they can't write the response on how they got it, they lose points. And you're thinking, but they got the answer correct,
Hmm.
because it's so critical now, right?
Well, yeah, the
To
parents can
understand.
go online onto the Ministry of Education website. They can pull up the curriculum, the math curriculum for their child's grade. It's very easy to find. And they can look at the expectations, Josie. So, for one example, is if Josie has a piece of pie and it has 3 out of 10 pieces already eaten, how many pieces are left for Josie to share with her two friends? Okay, so Josie needs to be able to subtract 7 pieces, 3 from 10, giving her 7 pieces left. And she knows that she has two friends, so she has to divide 7 by 2. So these are all mechanically induced procedures, which is fine. But then the curriculum says Josie needs to demonstrate her learning or her understanding in 2 different ways, using pictures, numbers, or words. So you might be able to mechanically do it, maybe, but if you can't demonstrate your understanding in multiple ways, then that's where the curriculum separates those who understand and who don't. So I may draw a pie graph, and I might draw the pieces in and color them in different colors and demonstrate the math by showing the pieces moving. That would demonstrate my understanding, and that's what the curriculum demands from us.
Mhm.
Do you understand the math? What it's asking from you? Can you communicate it and solve the problem in different ways? So a lot of the time, parents will say, Josie, well, the way I learned it like this when I was in school, and it's this way, and it's the only way. But that relies on your child understanding your way. And if they don't, then what? That's where the struggle and the frustration comes in, because they don't understand that. But there are multiple ways to do something. And if there are multiple ways and we can show them 3 or 4 or 5 ways on how to do something, then one of them is going to certainly hit. And that's what we're trying to do in schools these days. So, for example, if you're going to teach a child how to add or multiply 6 times 5, you could use a number line. You can use the array model. There's 5 or 6 different models that you could use. You can use groupings. Heck, you could even use your fingers. That's a great manipulative to use. If you can use any one of those methods and strategies and manipulatives to help a child understand, the odds of them understanding skyrocket and the frustration drops and they move from I hate math to, oh, I get it now.
Mm-hmm.
And that really is important for teachers and parents to communicate that so that kids don't feel threatened by math and they see it as a good thing, something they like and something they enjoy doing.
And people are able to, the children are able to express it the way they're comfortable expressing it. So they don't have to learn it this way. And that's the only way to do it. So the creativity, we embrace it, we encourage it, and we share it. We say, okay, look at how, I know, coming from the teaching background, we even did it in the younger grades in kindergarten too. It's like, oh, let's see how this person did it, and this one, and this one. And they look at other examples like, oh, maybe next time I'm going to try that way. And it just, we're embracing the learning and sharing the learning, but also celebrating the different ways things can be done. And there's so many more, and it helps us to be more creative. So I appreciate all your expertise and your sharing. I mean, you've got a great background of knowledge in this field and in teaching and in coaching, and now you are helping the future teachers that are coming out there to teach math. And so thank you so much for joining us. And I hope that parents can take a few notes from this podcast to help their kids to enjoy math if they don't yet, right? Because they'll be good at it later. That it's what did we say? You're not good at it
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah, that's
Yet
right.
is the word.
That's
Thank
right.
you. Thank you, Mark, for all of your time and for your expertise and sharing with us.
Oh, my pleasure, Josie. Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to chatting with you again on whatever the next great topic is, and I hope this is of some service to your parent audience.
It is to me, so I'm sure it is to them too. Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Have a great day.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Parents, remember, you make a difference.